If you're here, you're bang on time. And I think that's fantastic. We will give some other participants a minute or two to join in. So please bear with me for another minute or two. In the meanwhile, go ahead, grab your cup of coffee or chai or whatever you wish to drink while you listen to me talking about getting an engineering degree internationally. My name is Tripti Singh, and I will be hosting the session today. We'll just give another 1 or 2 minutes for the other people to join in, and then we'll start. While we wait, I would love to get some insights on what your undergrad degree has been or is currently, if you're still studying your final year. And specifically, if somebody is here from a non-engineering background, I would love to know about you. So can you go ahead and just quickly in the Q&A box, put in a little bit about what your undergrad degree has been. I mean, if you say BTech, then I know it's BTech, but if you can go ahead and share your specialization, I'd really appreciate that. And especially if you're from a non-engineering, non-BTech background, like a BVOC in ComSci or something, I'd love to see that. Hi, I just had someone message that they're looking for a PhD in management who already has an MBA degree. May I recommend that you join our webinar on management, which is later today. I'll just share the time with you. It's at 3 p.m. India time. So this webinar may not be of a lot of interest for you, but go ahead and join the webinar that I'm hosting at 3 p.m. IST today. It's about management. And I will definitely take your questions specific to the fact that you already have an MBA degree. And we can talk a little bit, in the Q&A section specifically with you about your interest in a PhD degree in management. So this is definitely going to be information that it's great if you just want to listen in, but it will not be information that's really pertinent to you. But we have another one coming up at 3 p.m. IST today on management. All right, so I think we can begin now. Late attendees can just join in and possibly see the recording later of what they missed. So welcome everyone. I'm going to talk to you about getting an engineering master's degree. I represent the Red Pen, and the Red Pen is an educational counseling firm, and we are focused on getting you the right, most unbiased and most objective information. I personally have been doing master's and PhD counseling for the last 16 plus years. And my focus area is on international education. So I'm going to talk to you a lot about what you can study and where you can study and what you need to really think through when you are picking your right subject within the realm of engineering. Now, when we work with applicants who have a BTech degree, a lot of them look at, okay, I want to just do pure management and things like that. But very often we are looking at engineering degree holders coming to us looking at pure engineering masters. Now, how do you decide whether you as a BTech in chemical engineering should study a master's in chemical engineering, or should you be looking at something which is a little more streamlined, a little more specialized? So the first thing that I always tell students is to evaluate the work experience or the internship or the projects and the kind of research that they've done in their undergraduate journey. if you have really explored your area of chemical engineering enough, and I'm just taking chemical as an example here, if you have explored chemical engineering enough and you feel like you have the knowledge that it takes to commit to saying, well, I have a strong foundation in chemical engineering, then you potentially are a candidate who should be looking at more specialized branches of engineering, something which is molecular or material or process, so that you are now going to become a subject matter expert within that one realm. And because you've spent so much time studying the foundation, you probably identified your strength by then, that, well, your core strength and innate interest lies in X specialization within the realm of chemical engineering. A lot of times your transcripts can actually give you those insights as well. If you go back from SEM 1 right up until now and look at what have been the areas of academic strength, you're going to be able to identify a pattern that leads you to your area of specialization. However, on the other hand, if you are a chemical engineering undergrad and you feel like, you know what, I do know chemical engineering a lot, I haven't really been able to identify my area of specialization yet. I feel like I still need more advanced knowledge in chemical engineering to then commit to an area of work or specialization that I would like to pursue and create an impact within. In which case, you can look at a master's in general chemical engineering, which will not commit you to one specialized allied area of focus, right? So this is where your journey begins. Take a step back, look at your resume right from first year onwards, look at your transcripts, try to identify a pattern of strength and innate interest. Innate interest means I studied this subject, this module very effortlessly. It didn't take a lot of effort. I loved it. I was very motivated to read it further. I was very motivated to do a project in it or a research paper in it. It's just something that comes very naturally to me as an interest area. That's your innate interest, right? So go ahead and start your journey here on figuring out whether I want to stick to pure chemical engineering or do I want to do something which is more specialized because I have the foundational knowledge that I need and now I want to be a subject matter expert, all right? Now, this is just within the realm of pure engineering, but then there are interdisciplinary branches of engineering that you could also consider, right? I would not recommend that you look at any of this if you haven't dabbled with it already in your undergrad and you have a strong sense of what does it mean to be a quantum engineer or an energy engineer, right? And if you are in your junior, you've just graduated your junior year, going on to senior year, then this is that great summer to explore it. Academically, you can explore it, read books, read literature, read research papers, conduct research in it, or just go ahead and get an internship that allows you to experience this space, right? If you say, well, I want to get a master's in nuclear engineering, you must really know what it means to be a nuclear engineer before you commit to studying it for another 2 years. And that's a really important thing to know. When I look at this table that we've created, the most popular of the three interdisciplinary branches that our applicants apply for are engineering management, financial engineering, and biotechnology. And these are very, very popular, to apply to from an Indian origin perspective. Industrial engineering also comes a close second. So, when we are looking at these programs, we always encourage our applicants to go out and explore their interest, explore this area theoretically, practically, and then come back and say, well, this is the area that I want to create an impact in, and therefore I want to study this for my master's degree and not a general master's in computer science or whatever. This is important to know. When we look at countries, and it's a very Indian mindset that we have that, oh, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and apply to the US, or I'm going to apply to US and Canada because North America does it beautifully. Of course, North America does it beautifully. There's no doubt about it. The amount of money those universities spend on their engineering research is unparalleled, right? But they're not the only countries who do it, who spend that kind of money on research and spend that kind of money on advancing their knowledge. Europe does it beautifully. There's a lot of renewable work happening in Europe. There's a lot of nuclear work happening in Europe. There's a lot of work happening in Europe when it comes to sustainability sciences and engineering for energy engineering. So there are programs available that will truly take your knowledge to the next level. But then some of us also have our priorities in terms of how long do I want to study, right? How long will I be able to stay back? So it's very important for you to kind of get that information first before you eliminate certain countries. I wouldn't say pick a country. I would say eliminate a country, right? In fact, if you're somebody who's attending this session today and is thinking to themselves, you know what? I'm kind of open-minded. As long as I get great education and I get a fantastic opportunity to get recruited afterwards into the industry that I wish to work in, I don't care which country I study in. That's fantastic. Because then that means that your research can organically include the best and the best fit and the best programs for you across the globe. And it doesn't matter what that country is, right? That's important. Go ahead, take a screenshot of this slide if you want, because you may want to spend some time studying it at the end of the session. I'm going to move on to the next slide now. When we look, remember I mentioned that 3 of the key areas that a lot of applicants who work with us, apply for the engineering, management, biotech, and financial engineering. Then coming from a pure BTech background, right? And if you're not from a BTech background, then definitely ask me a question about what prerequisites will it be for you. I'm happy to kind of touch upon that in the Q&A section. But there will be prerequisites that you need to double check on your transcripts, whether you have them or you don't. All right. So for example, if you are a BTech in civil and you want to do financial engineering, you want to check this list and go back to your transcript and say, well, you know what? I have done linear algebra, but I haven't done probability theory. And then if you're applying for 2023 intake, then you have time from now until August 2023 to build that into your profile, right? And if somebody wants to know how you can do that, leave me a message or question in the Q&A, and I will answer that for you in the Q&A section. But make sure that you double check the prerequisites if you're looking at allied fields or interdisciplinary fields of engineering, because there may be some prerequisites that A, could be mandatory, or B, will just give your profile that additional edge, right? So that's very important to know. I also pulled through some statistics for you people. If you guys just want to understand, what is the job market looking like? Well, it's hard. I'll be honest with you. COVID hasn't been kind to any of the economies in the world. But honestly, if there is a room for international employment or for international students to get employed in other economies, the technical skills are probably the safest and the smartest choice, because technical skills will never go out of fashion. So, which is why I thought, maybe it's a good idea to pull up some of the latest reports that are available on the internet. And we've put together some of these reports for you, just to give you guys a brief understanding of, well, what are the salary expectations that you could have? What are the kind of job availabilities in the industries that people are getting jobs in? This is a UK-based report. Hasn't been updated last year, but, we tried to get as much as we could from these reports for you. Go ahead and take screenshots if you wish to. We also got the industries in the UK that, pretty much hire engineers. So, the manufacturing space is a lot of manufacturing happening in UK. US doesn't do as much manufacturing. So, the renewable energy resource area, like Europe, fantastic to work in the energy and renewable nuclear space. So these are some of the sectors that you can look at when you're looking at the Europe and UK. The Canadian trend is here as well. Canada does engineering well, but Canada doesn't do all engineering programs well, right? So some of the leading programs, there is chemical, petroleum, oil. So, you may want to consider Canada if you are looking at one of those areas of specialization. So this would be important for you to know then. For some of you who are repeating your attendance to my webinar series, then you have been with me through the entire component webinar that I did initially. And I did one very specialized webinar on resumes. So, we've been through that. And if you've just attending here for the very first time, go ahead on YouTube on the Red Pen channel and you'll find recordings of both those webinars there. So today I'm not going to spend time on talking about all the components of your application. I'm going to touch upon predominantly your statement of purpose, or your personal statement, like it's called in Canada and UK and Europe. But here, there is a very important element that's mentioned here, which is interviews, right? Now, pre-COVID, I never really saw engineering schools ask their candidates for a lot of interviews, all right? And 2019, 2020 was a year when a lot of these universities started experimenting with video essays. So these third-party ed tech platforms came in, who would be offering their services to universities, which would basically allow you to create an account. One of these very popular ones are called Kira, K-E-R-A. So basically the university gets an account with Kira. So then when you are submitting your form, they allow you to create an account on Kira, and then Kira has a question bank which allows you to practice for the video essay, and then it gives you a final question, and then you record a video essay. So that in 2019, 2020 started happening. And then 2020 onwards, we just saw so many more video essays going out, because the GRE waivers were being given out, and, a lot of people were applying with a lot of work X suddenly because, they decided, okay, this is a great time for me to apply for masters. So engineering schools started seeing like a whole range of applications, which was unprecedented, to be honest, for them. So they started finding newer, more novel ways of being able to gauge fit. And video essays was one of them. And then from last year, I've noticed that, interviews have started happening, which was a very business school kind of a niche. They would do a lot of interviews, but now engineering schools will do interviews sometimes with candidates. They may not do them for all candidates. And they may already have done a video essay with you, but for some candidates who they might want to do further vetting, or they just want to get to know better, or they have a couple of 3, 4, maybe 5 candidates, and they have less seats. So they want to kind of gauge between these candidates who should really be offered an admit first and the others being placed in a wait list or something like that. So, there are interviews that are done. Of course, interviews are different kind. North American interviews are a little different from the British interviews. But inherently, that's something that you need to be aware about as engineering students, that you will have interviews and you should prep for them well. But we are going to talk predominantly now about the statement of purpose. So what you're going to write as an engineering applicant, right, to an engineering program, an engineering school, is going to be a technical statement of purpose, right? The reason why I'm calling it technical, everybody, is because it's not creative writing. I'm going to repeat that. It's not creative writing. I grew up watching my grandfather fix his old Mercedes in our garage. That was my first introduction to mechanical engineering. It's a great start in your first draft. Eventually in your last draft, if this introduction has made it to your final draft, in my opinion, your essay is lacking impact. It's lacking the impact that an introduction needs to let everybody know that you have the maturity and you have a lot of intent and you have a lot of technical expertise to share in your essay, which is why creative writing has come in. Okay. So in your first draft, you can go ahead and write whatever you want, but eventually your draft has to be a technical SOP, right? You first must understand the purpose of the statement of purpose. The purpose of the statement of purpose is not to share your whole life. It is to share the nuances, the snippets of your journey that allowed you to be a good engineer, or fail in the endeavor of trying to be a good engineer. What was your awakenings from those? What were your realizations from those, which have now led to the understanding that I need a further graduate degree in engineering, and therefore, what are my goals that I aspire towards, right? Where have those motivations come from? So it is a statement of motivation. It is a statement of your aspirations. It is a statement of your academic and professional experiences, but not a para format of your resume, because your resume is already there. They're reading your resume. This is assuming that they've read your resume. Now you go into examples. Now you go into sharing what the details of the project were, where you failed, how you failed, where you succeeded, how you succeeded. That's a technical SOP. All right. Every college, and the more dream the college is, like the more popular, the more competitive the college is, they are going to have specifications on what they expect from your statement of purpose or personal statement. Canada, UK, Europe, they call it personal statement. Singapore calls it personal statement. So they're going to tell you, we want a 1200 word essay. They're going to tell you, we want a 1500 word double spaced essay. They're going to tell you, we want a 1500 character essay. 1500 character means the dot, the period, the space bar, the comma, everything is a character. It's not 1500 words, it's 1500 characters with spaces. Okay. So you have to be very mindful of adhering to that format requirements that each technical SOP will ask of you, right? When you are talking about a technical SOP, right, you are going to use a lot of examples from your subject area, but don't make it hard for someone to understand. By that, I basically mean don't use jargons. Because the admission officers who are reading your essays are not, or may not, are mostly not from an engineering background. All right. They could be from a socio background. They could be from a philosophy background. They could be from a computer science background, sure, but you're not confirmed that they would be, right? So you want to make sure that it's easily understandable by anybody. And honestly, that's where once your essay is done, getting it read by a third person to say, well, do you understand what I'm trying to say, might actually be helpful. When we work with applicants, we do blind readings within our team as well. So there is an editor who's working with you on your essay and kind of helping you build your narrative and pull out nuances of your narrative to include it in the essay. So this one person knows a lot about your narrative, right? So what we do is when the essay is in a good space, then your essay content specialist is going to share it with another content specialist who has no idea who you are. All right. And then that person is going to do a blind reading for you. So that basically means, we kind of make sure that before you submit your SOP, a third person has read it who has zero idea about your background. If you're a chemical engineer and your dad is a chemical engineer and you give it to your dad to read it, of course, he'll understand a lot of it. And which is why he'll be like, well, why are you talking about that Lego project that you did 3 years ago or when you were 5 years old and you won the swimming competition in grade 8 for your school? Well, that's because, dad loves you and mom loves you and they think that all of those are very big achievements and they were for that age, right? A technical statement of purpose is not a place for that. It's a place for giving it to your mom and saying, well, as a layman who's probably never studied chemical engineering, do you understand everything that I'm talking about here? Does the story flow for you? Gives you a clear insight about what my experiences were that have led me to understand that I want to study engineering for grad school. That's the focus of the blind reader, right? So be mindful of who's doing your third level reading. It's very, very important. When you're talking about your experiences, they have to be backed with examples, right? I worked on this project at ONGC and we were applauded for it. Fantastic. But you're not telling me what you did there, which is not helping me understand why you want a master's in chemical engineering. Right? So when we were working on this project at ONGC, this was assigned to us. This is what we did. This is where I failed. My supervisor gave me this kind of feedback. Therefore, I was able to understand that this is the knowledge gap that I have. Something to that end will allow me as a reader to understand your experiences, right? Which can then show me that you're making an informed choice to choosing masters in chemical engineering, or a master's in engineering management, or a master's in biotechnology, whichever it is that you're choosing, right? Finally, honestly, as grad school applicants, there is no room for grammatical errors. I'll be very honest with you. It's very off-putting for admission officers who've told us personally when we meet them. They say that, we read so many essays in the application season time that if there are just like basic grammatical errors, it's very off-putting. It's just like it turns them off. They're like, oh, you know what? Couldn't they just take a little bit care? It's important. It's important to present your best foot forward. It's important to show that you are detailed, focused. You're somebody who's willing to double check their work. You're not haphazard about submissions and things like that, because that's also an insight into who you are as a person, right? And they want mature people in their college, because guess what? Engineering grads, your pool is the most competitive to any international university because you're competing with people from 0 to probably 7-8 years work ex. Somebody with 6 years work ex might wake up today and decide, I want to do a master's in engineering or whatever one of those fields are. So you have it hard, right? And you don't want to lose out to the competition just because you were careless, right? You can use American English. You don't have to use British English, but be consistent. If you're using British English, just use British English everywhere. If you're using American English, just use American English everywhere, right? It doesn't matter whether you spell specialized with a Z or an S, as long as if you spelling specialized with an S, then you spell analyze with an S as well, right? Just be consistent with that, right? Make sure that your spacing is accurate. Make sure that your font is aligned. It's uniform. You're not using Arial one place and then Times New Roman in the second place. Something is 11 size, something is 9 size. Just be a little more careful about your technical SOP. What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch my slide now, and I'm going to give you guys 30 seconds because I've put together an example for you to read. Take 30 seconds, everybody, and just read both these paras. And then in the Q&A section, I would love to know from you what you thought worked. First of all, I would love to know from you which is the good example, which is the bad example. Okay. And then why do you think X the one above is X, the one below is Y. Why do you think X is better than Y or Y is better than X? I would love to have that discussion with you in the Q&A section of our conversation. All right, I'm going to continue talking. But it's very important to know what you are trying to convey, which is why I said, the first draft can be a really long draft, 3 pages long, doesn't matter. Put your whole journey from first year onwards down there. But then, your final draft has to be much crisper, much more to the point. If you have a limit of 1200 words on your essay, a typical SOP without a word count specified should be 1000 to 1200 words. All right. Now, suppose you have a word limit of 1200 words, but you have 850 words of a really solid essay. Don't try to fill in the other 300 words if you have nothing to say, which could be impactful and very to the point, right? Because then we call that filler content. You don't need filler content here, right? What you really need is to be able to present your story in the most succinct and precise manner. And if that can be achieved in 850 words, you don't need to do the whole 1200 word count. It's fine. Not a problem. Okay, I'm going to go on. Now, we spoke about the components, and components are really important. And then your GPA is very important. Your GRE score is and yes, for all engineering schools, you will give the GRE exam. All right. So the GRE is very important in your data bubble. And then, of course, there is your recommendations that are super important. Your video essay is important. Your essay is important. But then what makes a university, let's assume Carnegie Mellon University or University of Edinburgh, choose candidate A versus candidate B? Well, I like to call it the X factor, right? Is there intellectual curiosity in this candidate? Right? Now, intellectual curiosity for fresh graduates, it's very simple for me to explain it to you. As a fresh graduate, have you researched your area that you want to study ahead? If you're telling me that, my affinity in business analytics is tremendous, and which is why even though I'm a comp-sci grad, I'm looking at studying business analytics ahead. Have you done any research which involves analytics, right? What have you read outside of your curriculum textbooks? Have you read Andrew Ng's theories, or have you read some other computer scientist theories which bring analytics into the foray? And that was not prescribed as a part of your curriculum, but you're just so fascinated by understanding business analytics and its application in the real world that you've gone ahead and read all these academic reading books, 3 of them, maybe not all. What projects have you engaged in? Have you actually used your analytical skills? We very often see resumes which have a section below called skills. And then people write Python, R, C++, Java. That's fantastic. You're telling me you know Python, R, C++, Java. That's brilliant. Show me that you know Python, R, C++, and Java. Don't tell me. Do projects. Use the skills. You don't have a project component in your curriculum, self-initiate a project. If you're telling me you know Python, I'm not asking you for a certification. Where are you going to send me a certification? 0 couriers. Nobody's couriering, no document, nobody's reading your certifications. Show me. Show me in your internship that you've used Python. If your resume internship section has a point saying, worked on this project and did the data mining through Python. I don't even know if Python is used for data mining. I'm just using it as a hypothetical example. Please excuse my knowledge there. But if you say did data mining using Python, you're showing me that you know how to use Python. You don't need to put it down in the resume section there. You get that? So projects is very important. Getting your hands dirty is very important. Getting your hands dirty and doing internships and working is so important that sometimes when I'm talking to young engineers who want to go for a master's immediately after graduation and they haven't really done a lot in college except for get fantastic grades. I went to IIT. I am in IIT senior year. I have a near 4.0 GPA. I want to go for my master's. I'm going to ace the GRE. They still may not get into MIT and GTech and Harvard if that's what they're planning because they don't have the X factor. So the internship or getting your hands dirty is so important that sometimes I'm telling my engineering students, applicants who are prospective applicants that, hey, don't go next year, work for a year, make some mistakes, understand the industry that you want to work in, understand who you are in that space, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and then come back to me next year and then let's discuss what you want to do a master's in. Worked with a student 3 years ago, 4 years ago, maybe, chemical engineering, working in chemical engineering, worked for 2 years. Then when that person came back to me, applied for a program which was not chemical engineering, which was his initial plan. He wanted to do a master's in chemical engineering. Instead decided to work. When he came back to me, he didn't apply for chemical engineering, master's. Right? Because you really understand who you are in that space. And those are the insights that work for amazing competitive grad school admits. So your X factor is what will truly set you apart and make one university admit you versus the next Indian female engineer who's coming with some phenomenal GPA and GRE score. So your X factor is very, very critical to that end. Now, I did mention some names. I mentioned MIT, I mentioned CMU, I mentioned University of Edinburgh, TU Delft, amazing places that people always think about studying at. But then there are amazing other places that, we as Indian applicants often don't consider dream college enough. And every college here is a dream college for an engineering related degree. Of course, they should have a degree in your specific area of interest, but these are amazing engineering schools that we don't typically hear of in India. And I don't think that's okay. I think if you have your dream colleges, which are dream just because they're popular for you, then that means your research is very superficial. You haven't gone in depth into your college research. You really need to dig deeper and find colleges that are really dream colleges and worth applying to. And may not be as popular in India, but are definitely as competitive as getting into a Harvard or a GTech or a CMU or an MIT. Right? Okay, again, a screenshot worthy slide. I think you can go ahead and take a screenshot and then you can look at it later. You can do some research, especially if you're looking at 2024 applications, admit, 2023 admit. So applying this year. And finally, this brings me to the Q&A section, right? So we have about 25 minutes. If there are any questions that I can answer for you, I'd be super happy to. Go ahead and put them in the question box, and I'd be happy to respond to your questions. All right, until we're waiting for the questions to come in, does anybody want to unmute themselves and answer for me which was a good example and which was a bad example in the SOP? Let me check. Rohit, are you with us today? Rohit, would you like to unmute yourself and look at and think about the SOP slide that I had shared and tell me which was a good example, which was a bad example? Hi, Rohit.
Yeah, actually, I joined a bit late, so I was not with you during the SOP slide.
Okay, so let me go back to this slide. I showed 2 examples of an SOP. Can you see my screen?
No, it's your video cam. Okay. No, not yet.
Okay, now?
Yeah, now it's visible.
Okay, so one is a good example of an SOP and one is a bad example, Rohit. If you feel like, I mean, no pressure at all, but I was just wondering if you know which is a good example versus which is a bad example.
Yeah, definitely the bottom one.
Why?
Well, in the second case, the terminologies used by the applicant are specific, and
It's
think
more
it's,
concise, right? It's more
yeah,
to the point.
it's concise, precise, sort of that way.
Yeah. Do you think there are areas of the second part which can also be improved?
Sorry, can you repeat?
Do you think that there are parts of the second one that can be made better?
Um, since the second part only includes sort of what the applicant thinks, we can include the experience he or she has from her internships or her projects. So, sort of
That
what,
could be the body. Yeah.
yes,
This is the introduction.
yeah.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. This would then, flow into the experiences, the academic and internship experiences. You're absolutely right. I'm just thinking aloud, right? Because it says here, my study and work have impressed on me that our systems. I don't talk like that. I don't say words like
Yeah,
impressed on me. But maybe this candidate does, right? So which is fine. So the idea is that you use language that comes naturally to you. It's the way you think in English, and then you're able to put that down. And that's okay. It doesn't have to be formal English, but it can't be casuals like cause, COZ. It can't be casual because it's an academic technical statement. It's an academic piece of writing, but for academic purpose, but it can't be, it doesn't have to be the Queen's English, if I can put it like that. A lot of us have been taught English in Queen's English, but if you're not somebody who thinks in Queen's English, then it's fine. But just don't be too casual about your language.
yeah.
Don't use short forms and abbreviations where you clearly cannot get away with that. Right? Like, for example, again, this person wrote entrance exam, MHCET. If you've written state engineering entrance exam, honestly, how many people outside of Maharashtra know what MHCET is? You could just read the state engineering entrance exam, right? Which is why I didn't make it the cut. But Rohit, thank you for participating. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I just thought maybe you'll have something to say.
Excuse me, were there any slides you showed before this one?
There were so many slides that I showed before this one. You'll get the recording on YouTube. You can go ahead and take a look.
Okay.
This was the end of our presentation.
Oh, sorry. I actually joined at 11:20. So
no worries. You see the recording, Rohit. No worries.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rohit.
Thank you.
Shrikant is asking me that civil engineering background, graduated 2015, 7 years of work ex, advancement using data science, developed an interest presently learning data science. Now I do masters. Oh my God, Shrikant, you are one of so many. I cannot tell you the number of applicants we have worked with in the last 2 years who have had more than 4 years of work ex. Engineering background, organically started working in data science or analytics, realized that, this is the future of my industry, and are now studying in the United States or in the UK, doing either business analytics or data science. So absolutely, Shrikant, you have a great chance of getting in if you're able to articulate your story well in your SOP. If you have a strong data point, your GRE, if you're doing data science, if you're business analytics, then do the GMAT. But if your GRE is strong, there's a little to be said about your GPA, but I think that we can discuss offline if you get in touch with us. If your GRE is strong, if your narrative is articulate, your experiences align with what your goals are with after data science, of course, you have a chance of getting into some good universities. No doubt about it. There's no doubt in my mind about it. All right. Samar, do you have any questions? We are now a much smaller group. A lot of people have logged out. So I actually have a chance to answer some questions. If somebody has a very specific question about their profile, I can definitely answer it for you. You're welcome, Shrikant. Sama, you can either unmute yourself or you can put it in the chat box if you have a question. Just picking random names. Anju, if you have any questions, happy to answer them for you. Sanya, same for you. Okay, Sanya has a question. So Sanya, you're currently pursuing comp application in IT. You want to study in Canada, but they require 4 years. So should I go for 1 year postgrad diploma and then masters, or do my masters and then go to Canada? So Sanya, there is no wrong answer. Okay, if you're looking at a 1-year PG diploma, then make sure that one, it aligns with what you want to study in grad school. Two, it has an AICTE accreditation, or it is offered by a NAC accredited university with an A or an A plus ranking. Second, Sanya, if you feel like, you know what, I'm doing that PG diploma just for the sake of it. Honestly, the knowledge that I will gain will not be that much. There is zero harm in you committing to doing a master's here. Finish your master's, Sanya. Take those 2 years to truly build a strong profile. A lot of internship, project-related work, academic readings, GRE, solid, all of that. And then the kind of universities that you'll be able to apply to, Sanya, will be another level. Your dream college list will suddenly become more robust. But there is no wrong answer here. If time is your priority, then a PG diploma will work. If you are not time bound, but you really want those amazing competitive admits, Sanya, then giving yourself a full master's experience will actually add a lot more knowledge to your data set. And then you can consider that. We've had students doing both, and honestly, there's no right or wrong answer there. A lot depends on the kind of projects you do, the kind of internships you do, the kind of GRE score you have, the GPA that you graduate with. So those factors will definitely weigh in more. But doing a PG diploma or master's, there's no wrong answer. All right. I answered that for you. Okay, so somebody is asking me if why it is not advisable to mention any extracurriculars in the SOP. Like you mentioned, Dad saying did an outstanding project at age 5. So to clarify that, right, when we are looking at a graduate school statement of purpose, we have to consider activities that align with your area of interest. Okay. First of all, remember that you are still a young person. I mean, even Shrikant, who's got 7 years of work ex, is growing. He's maturing every year, right? His professional goals are maturing. He as a professional is maturing. He as a person is maturing. So universities honestly don't really want to see your younger, more nascent version of successes. So everything from first year onwards is all that they are typically focused on, unless you represented India in the Olympics, or you're a member of the BCCI Indian cricket team, which is something really noteworthy, and you want to mention that even though it doesn't align with your area of interest. All right. But other than that, if you do not have that level of, well, I have a national level Kathak dancer and I perform or whatever, which is ongoing, fantastic, put it in the resume. But in your technical statement of purpose, if you're dancing, as you as a danseuse, has added a lot of discipline and levels of focus into who you are as a person, as a professional, then you will try and make that connection in your SOP, right? But if you're not getting to make that connection, there is no way for you to connect your extracurricular, which is ongoing, not in the past, to the area of interest and what you aspire to do, then there is absolutely no place for it in the SOP. There might be a separate essay. Some essays, some colleges ask for, tell us 25 things about yourself outside of your application. Or, tell us about your extracurriculars in 250 words. So those are places where you'll mention it. You can mention your extracurriculars from first year onwards in your resume. But the technical SOP will then it's not your life story. It's very specifically a motivational statement, very specifically. Okay, somebody is asking me that how can they create a solid SOP by tying in their story with the LORs? Now, first of all, there has to be a strategy behind your recommendations. And for anybody who wants deep insight on that, you can read a blog that we've written. It's on the redpen.in website. And you go to the blog section and you can search the letters of recommendation. You'll find it there. So when we are talking about your recommendations, one has to be academic, especially if you're a young graduate. If you're Shrikant, who has 7 years plus work ex, he can request for a waiver on academic recommendations. But pretty much most of you will need one academic recommendations. So whatever you've done within the classroom, if it's a faculty member, and it doesn't matter what subject they've taught you, but if it's a faculty member, they'll talk about your achievements within the classroom. So then it has to be somebody who can vouch for the extracurricular that you've done outside of college. So instead of giving certifications, that person, the dean, for example, or the HOD, right, who it's their business to know what you're doing outside the classroom. It's not your economics teacher's business to know what you're doing outside the classroom, right? So somebody in that credible status in college can then talk about the fact that they know that you did hackathons, you represented college for 5 other Olympiads. So all of those, right, is the way your story gets credibility. All right. So make sure that you kind of safeguard that in your LOR, and that's how it all ties in. Even work, when you're doing professional work, if you're getting a recommendation from your CEO, the person has never worked with you, they're not going to be able to add credibility to the examples that you're sharing in your SOP. But if you get a recommendation from your direct supervisor and they don't talk about the same projects, then suddenly your story is authentic, right? So bear that in mind. That's a great question, by the way. All right. Okay, somebody said that when their sister applied with an education counselor, they thought the SOP lost its voice. It sounded too professional. How can I be assured that my story and voice will be maintained? I think there are 2 key parameters here to look at when you're working with a third-party support group or a third party on your essays. One, you cannot get somebody else to write it for you. That's your voice, which is what I was just telling Rohit earlier in the session, that you have to write in an English the way you think. If you think in Queen's English, write in Queen's English. But if you don't, then don't. If you're somebody who's very serious and an intense kind of a person, totally understandable if your story if your entire voice is like that in the essay. But if you have this fun, jovial, comic, light-hearted person, then your essay would be a representation of the voice that you have as a person, right? So very, very important that nobody else writes it for you. That's the first way. The second thing is that you have to ensure that the job of your essay editor is not to over-accessorize your essay. Of course, they will give you comments on your story, on your narrative. What's working, what's not working, where are more examples needed, what is not flowing well. They can help you, straighten out the flow by saying, hey, you know what you've written is actually a great introduction, pull it up and then make it go in reverse chronology instead of going in chronological fashion for whatever it's worth. But they're not going to tell you to use vocabulary that is very hi-fi and, jargon. And so the accessorizing it is not the job of an essay editor, which is when it ends up looking doctored. Right? The voice has to be the way you think in your head. And the essay editor's job is to ensure that you're supported in understanding what your story is for this specific question, right? Whatever that question may be. And then grammatical checks and things like that. It's not to beautify your essay and add words that you would actually have never used in your daily life. All right. Another question that we have is, if someone applying to 5 different countries, should I write new SOPs for each? Well, at this point in your journey of applications, you have a lot of time. So what you can start is do a skeleton statement of purpose draft, which has your entire story down in a very systematic, structured flow manner. Then when you have your college list ready and the college forms open in August, September, you can then look at what the exact prompt, and the question that they ask for the SOP is what we call prompt technically. So we look at the prompt and then you will have elements of the narrative ready that you can just plug in and then restructure and build a flow off and then conclude well. So you don't have to write 5 new SOPs, provided you have one strong draft that covers your entire narrative. So you know what elements will match well. But every SOP must be well researched for the why element of it. The why this college, why this subject, why this country. It's very, very important. All right. We have another 5 minutes. If there are any other questions, I'm happy to take them right now. Anju, do you have a question? Okay, Anju does not have a question. Okay, super. I want to thank each and every one of you for attending today. It has been my utmost pleasure talking to you specifically about engineering programs. Our next webinar is going to be called Journey to College, where we do have, in fact, an engineering student on the panel. So this is a panel of 4 applicants who've been successful in the last cycle, and they have now going to talk to you and share their journey with you about what they did right, what worked for them, what didn't work for them, what advice they have for you. So go ahead and register for that. Shrikant, you can contact me directly on my email address. Actually, I am extremely open to you emailing me directly for any questions that you have. And if you want to book your free consult with us, you can scan this QR code, but go ahead and email us and we are very happy to connect with you. So, I was mentioning the Journey to College event. Definitely sign up for that webinar, and each one of you will have an amazing takeaway from that session for sure. At this point, thank you so much everybody for attending. I hope to see you all soon next Saturday at our Journey to College event. Bye-bye. Have a great weekend. Thank you, everyone.